Gentlemen, ladies, and anyone in between, I welcome you all, and today I'm going to show you how to make the world's smallest 100% weedless Texas rig. And right now is quite possibly one of the best times to start throwing the micro rigs for big fish. The fish fry are in the shallows, they're tucked underneath those overhanging trees. Big giant slab crappie are uptight, they're doing their thing. Big panfish are real aggressive. And if you want to get into those close quarters, the last thing you want to do is get hung up and blow up the spot you're trying to pull a big fish out of. This is an amazing and very effective way to get in tight and come out clean. Here we have the smallest Kitech on the smallest owner twist lock hook. This is a size 8. And if you look here, just look how much smaller this hook is. And if you look here, this is a tail chunk of a squirrel tail worm, as is this one. And again, we're talking really downsizing your presentation. Here is a tail chunk of an owner shivertail worm. Was picking these up for $1 on sale when the companies were blowing them out. A lot of guys out there love throwing gulp worms. Here's a 2.5-inch trout worm. A lot of guys don't know how to rig them without tearing them. This is a great way to do it. Very effective, very solid connection using this twist lock method that I'm going to show you how to make. And if you look here, you have a size 12 Royal Coachman. I'm not a fly fisherman, but if I was, I would probably rather throw this because this looks more like a nymph than half of the nymph patterns out there. And if you look here, you have some small jerkbait, minnow bait, kind of trout profile baits. Here is a very small Lucky Craft little snacky. And in comparison to something like this, it's even smaller. So you can go ahead and rig these up however you want. You can put a split shot on them like a Scooby-Doo rig, which I love to do. You can put a split shot up the leader. You can even kind of do a sliding worm weight up against the swivel. Or you can even put a heavier weight here, and this is a tail chunk of that squirrel tail worm, and it'll float it off the bottom, kind of making it look like a leech or something, I don't know. And for you guys out there that like fishing bait, this rigging method works equally as well when you're fishing mealworms or crickets. Just screw it through the chin of a mealworm or through the head of a cricket. Stick the hook through the belly. You don't even have to come all the way out the back. It'll keep the point out of harm's way, but when they bite down and you set the hook, boom, you got them. So that way you can kind of bottom bounce and throw your baits into heavy cover and come out clean. And I'm going to show you what you need and what it takes to make a bunch of these rigs. So hang tight and let's get started. Now let's go ahead and kick things off by going over what it is exactly you're going to need to make a bunch of these rigs. And to start off, Gamakatsu Executive Series J20 Jig Nymph hooks, size 10. What a spectacular little hook these are. They're actually stronger than the smallest owner that I showed you earlier. Very strong hook. It's a matte black, no spook finish. Great hooks. They'll hold big fish with no problems. Next up, in order to make the screw lock, you're going to need wire. I'm using number 3 Malin. Easy to get this stuff, just one word of caution. It's kind of a fine diameter. It's very flexible, very easy to work with. But when you clip it, that end becomes very, very sharp. You don't want to be sticking yourself. Just be careful, almost more so than when you're working around the hook point. Next up, you're going to need something to cut wire. I use this kind of extinct fancy specialty tool. You can, however, just ruin a pair of nail clippers if you want to cut this wire close. You're going to be working in kind of a constrained area, very small, detail oriented. So if you try to use a pair of dikes or stuff like that, you may have difficulty trimming the wire up close. So these kind of work good for me. A nail clipper that's disposable may be a better option. You're also going to need a pair of locking forceps. If you're a fisherman, you probably have these already. Locking forceps help keep everything where you need it to be when you're wrapping it. And the last thing you're going to need, the last piece of the puzzle, a size 18 gauge blunt tip needle. I ground the edge off because you just don't need the entire length. Otherwise, you're just going to waste wire. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to put all this together. And I'm going to show you how to make these as quickly and simply and safely as possible. Now for step number 1, we're going to go ahead and take our clippers. We're going to take our coil of wire and we're going to cut off about 4 or 5 inches to work with. And as you get more proficient with this, you can probably get it down to maybe 2.5 or 3 inches. You're going to take your wire and you're going to insert it into the needle like so. And you're going to run it straight out the back, being careful that you don't poke yourself. Anytime you're dealing with fine wire diameters, you really do have to watch yourself because a lot of times it's almost like dealing with a fishing hook. And you're going to take your forceps and you're going to clamp the wire in the jaws, being certain that when you clamp it in the jaws, that the wire is centered and not coming out the side, because the last thing you want to do is run your finger up the side of your forceps with that wire, because it's going to go straight in. So when you do clamp it, make sure that it is perfectly centered in the jaws, just like so, and not poking out the sides at all. Once you've gone ahead and done that, take the needle and press it down on the jaws of the forceps. Once it's done and tight, you can basically pretend it's all one unit, just like so. It's at this point we're going to grab our fishing hook and thread it over the wire like so, and all the way down to the needle. We're now, I'm going to kind of align the forceps just to give you an idea of how I'm doing this. You're going to take that hook and you're going to bend it along the shank of the needle like so. You can see the orientation of the forceps. It's bending the wire probably to around 10:30 on a clock. You're now going to go ahead and take that wire and bend it down and back around just like so, the opposite direction that you laid the hook. You can now kind of go ahead and release everything. It's at this point you can see that the hook is kind of moving around. Nothing's really keeping it tight. So we're going to go and take the needle and kind of pull it off the forceps. You can see now the fishing hook is kind of tight. It doesn't kind of flop around. What you're going to do next is pretty much the last step. You want to grab the hook at the bend. You want to grab the wire, and you're going to wrap it around the needle in such a way that the coils or the wraps give you your threading. Just like so. Now it's at this point, take your locking forceps, open them up, slide them out of the needle, being careful that you run no risk of poking yourself. Gently pull the hook and the coil off the needle like that. Grab your clippers yet again and get in real close. Now before you clip this wire, you want to make sure you know where these tag ends of the wires are going. So I don't know if you could see my finger grabbing that. Before I clip it, I want to make sure it's secure so it doesn't fall on the floor and go in your foot. And now I'm going to go ahead now and clip that. And if you look here, I have my spring. That's the screw lock. It's not centered all that well. If you go ahead and bend it, you can now get it centered perfectly, just like so. You're now ready to grab your plastics. This is not the right one. This is just the one I had lying around. And go ahead and just thread it on like so. There you go. You're done. The beauty of this is, not only does it work for soft plastics, and again, we're talking the smallest Texas rig, smallest screw lock. You can also use this with like mealworms or wax worms. So, and it does retain its weedlessness, because you get a mealworm. Hold on a second, let me get a little piece of plastic here. This is just a chunk of a robo-worm. We'll pretend it's a mealworm. So if you pretend this is a mealworm, instead of going the Texposed route, keep the point inside. So when you get the hit, you set the hook, the point comes out. It's just sitting right up there against the skin or the carapace or whatever it is on a mealworm. And when you set the hook, it comes through, but when you're bottom bouncing and all that kind of stuff, it stays safely embedded. So this, guys, is how you make the world's smallest weedless Texas rig. And with one coil of wire, if you only need 3 inches, you can probably, I don't know, what do you have, 42 feet times 4, so you can make, you know, what, 170, 168 of them, whatever it is, whatever. So all you need are clippers, those fancy schmancy jig nymph hooks from Kamikatsu, a pair of locking forceps. These are locking, cutting, and have tungsten jaws. These are like 20 bucks. I think they're like, I paid 15 off of Amazon. The cutters suck, but the jaws are great. But you can use basically any kind of $4 South Bend type of locking forceps. Malin wire for a 42-foot coil. If you buy it at a tackle shop, it'll run you $4 or $5. Amazon, I think, is about 6 and change. And these little clippers here, you can use anything. You can ruin a pair of nail clippers. But the 3-pack, it comes with a micro pair of needle nose, a pair of flat jaw pliers, and these little nippers. I think Home Depot was selling these years ago for 10 bucks. And that's pretty much all you need. And this is really the only... I don't know. I don't want to say you have to use these, but they work well. It's a metal tube. It's durable. It has the ability to lock the forceps into here, which makes it easier. And if you look here, it's 1.27 millimeters. I believe that's 18 gauge when it comes to a syringe or a needle. And you can buy like a 10-pack of these for like a couple bucks off of Amazon or something like that. Go with the blunt tips, that way you don't stab yourself. But with all that being said, I really want you guys to go ahead and try this out. And I really want to see your catches on them. And I'm not a social media guru per se, but I think if you are on Instagram and you hashtag Tackle Advisors on your catches with this, I think they'll show up in my feed that I can actually see. It'll say like somebody mentioned Tackle Advisors. But yeah, try out this rig. Let me see what you guys catch on them. I'm curious. I've done well earlier this spring on trout. I'm not really a panfish fisherman, so I'm not really going to employ these all that much. And I'll tell you what, if I can get somebody to hashtag Tackle Advisor this exact rig and catch a striped bass on it, saltwater striped bass, because I'm willing to bet you can use this and those little gulp worms like this during a cinder worm hatch or something like that and catch a fish on it, I'll give you something nice. And with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Try it out. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And until next time, guys, tighten lines, and I will see you soon.